Namaste and welcome. You are watching Bharat TV and I am Hriday Raval. Tonight, we turn our focus to Bangladesh, a nation standing at the crossroads of democracy, geopolitics, and intelligence intrigue. From the mysterious death of a high-ranking US Special Forces officer in Dhaka to rising persecution of minorities and the upcoming 2026 elections under an interim regime, Bangladesh has become the new flashpoint in South Asia. To help us understand what's really unfolding beneath the surface, I am joined today by Dr. Richard Benkin, a distinguished human rights advocate, author, and a longtime observer of Bangladesh in South Asian affairs. Hello, Namaste, sir. Welcome to Bharat News yet again. We are very happy and honored that you are with us today and sharing your wisdom with us, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. The honor is mine. The honor is mine. It was so good seeing you when I was in India, when I was in Bharat, and I hope we get to see each other more.
Definitely, sir. Pleasure is mine, sir.
Mm.
So, sir, for our interview, let's start with the hot topic and the most controversial topic: the Modi assassination plot and the Dhaka death mystery, sir. On August 31st, 2025, a high-ranking U.S. Special Forces officer, Terrence Jackson, was found dead in the room number 808 of the Dhaka hotel. No autopsy was conducted, and the US Embassy officials took custody of the body directly, bypassing Bangladeshi investigative procedures. The case remained hidden for nearly 3 days, surfacing only on 3rd September 2025, raising suspicions on deliberate suppression. Coincidentally, that same day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was attending the SEO summit in Taiwan, where President Putin unexpectedly invited him for a private 45-minute car ride before their bilateral meeting. Sir, the question here is, do you believe these events were mere coincidence, or could Jackson's death be linked to the alleged Modi assassination plot that India and Russia intelligence may have quietly foiled?
Well, thank you for asking me that. It gives me a chance to address a bigger issue, but let me start by saying, uh, like you and probably most of your viewers, I'm not a big believer in coincidences. I tend to think that things happen. There are coincidences, but for the most part, I'm not a big believer in them. And as I'm sure, like you and your viewers, I would say, however, that the conspiracy theories about my country coming out of South Asia are incredible. I mean, if you know, sir, that I love India. I love the people of India. I come there a lot with love in my heart, and I only want to see India become an even greater superpower.
Yes.
I also am confounded at why the people of South Asia engage and get so excited about the most ridiculous conspiracy theories. Let's see, everything that happened to South Asia, according to what I hear in South Asia and from people from South Asia, everything that happens there pretty much is caused by the United States. Evidently, the people there, according to some people, these theories, the people there don't have the ability to do anything without the United States actually controlling it. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I think we all know that the people of India, and more generally people of South Asia, but especially the people of India, have the ability to control their own destinies. And they're showing the world how they're controlling their own destinies. By the way, just as a aside, which shows me again how strong India is. Every other country in the world, almost, not every other, but so many countries in the world have had to make that final trade agreement with the United States because, quite frankly, economically and militarily, we really are just too strong for it to be ignored. But there's one country that has stood up and has maintained that, no, we can't come to that final agreement unless both parties are satisfied with it. And that one country is India. And as an American who believes that the future of the world is much better with a strong U.S.-India relationship, and I think we're natural friends. But despite all that, when I say that India is the country that is saying, no, we're not going to make that deal, I say that with admiration and pride for India. So you are a great nation. You are a superpower. You do not have to have the United States controlling the events in your part of the world. That's number one. Number two, if you look at the way geopolitics are understood by most nations and how they look at things strategically, they often see the world broken up into spheres of influence. And South Asia is most definitely India's sphere of influence. You know, President Trump was elected in part on a promise not to send U.S. personnel and forces around the world. And the only way you do that and still maintain and support your interests is because you have allies in those other parts of the world who share some of those interests with you. And South Asia is that part of the world for India. I couldn't think of a better nation to have that sphere of influence, and for me as an American to feel good about it. I couldn't think of a better nation than India. So that's the second thing. The third thing is the thought that the United States would be behind a plot to assassinate Prime Minister Narendra Modi is about the stupidest notion I've ever heard in my life. Now let's break that down a minute. Let's pretend that we're not talking about anyone's good intentions, anyone being a good person. Think about the consequences of the United States assassinating one of the most notable, prominent leaders in the world and the leader of a great country and a great friend. The consequences would be horrendous. And by the way, if people are already saying, aha, I think it's happening, then those same people should ask themselves, do you really think it's going to be kept secret afterwards? Of course not. If you and whatever PC you're sitting in front of have been able to find it, you think no one else is? Now, imagine the consequences. Do you really think my country is that stupid and that the leaders of my country are that stupid? Maybe you do. Maybe you do. You're wrong if you do, but maybe you do, because you would have to think that we would go ahead and do something. That's the first thing. The consequences would be and also think of this in terms of consequences. Right now, the world is facing an ultimate struggle between the forces of democracy and the forces of authoritarianism. And two of the nations who represent those forces of democracy, who are the strongest supporters of that, are the United States and India. Now, imagine if we fracture that relationship and drive one or the other into the hands of the other part. We would be going in the complete opposite direction of where any kind of a strategic process should lead us. So again, it's ridiculous to even think that. I mean, it's just, forget about people being good or bad. It just doesn't make any sense. The other thing, if you look back at India's history, I think as an American, and I'm just speaking for myself now, although I know I reflect something that's believed by other people, but I'm just speaking for myself. If I look back at your country and I look at the different regimes, the regime under the administration of Prime Minister Narendra Modi is about the best one I can possibly think of. Certainly, the UPA regime was not very friendly towards the United States, and its policies were focused more on Western Europe. So I certainly wouldn't want to see a return to that. So again, I'm just talking about, it doesn't make, even if we said, okay, let's say it's strategically going to work out, which it's not, but let's say it is, this would be the last prime minister just for my own interests. Forget about, again, being good or bad. The last prime minister I'd want to assassinate. And I believe that if something happened to Prime Minister Modi, that my country would be in the forefront of those countries demanding to find out what happened. So I think any talk of a plot is ridiculous. Not only that, by the way, when I get back to this idea of conspiracy theories, so what have I heard? Now, when I was in South Asia not long ago, I heard we were behind the coup in Nepal, which, by the way, the members of the Gen Z generation revolution in Nepal find that highly insulting because they know they were the ones that seized their own futures, not some foreign power. But anyway, so what I heard, according to conspiracy theories, we were behind the coup in Nepal. Oh, we were behind the coup in Bangladesh, which I'll get to later in this talk. And that we were involved in the coup or the change of government in Sri Lanka, and that now we're trying to assassinate Prime Minister Modi. Every time something happens, someone who can post some nonsense online says it was the United States behind it. Let me tell you something. As an American taxpayer, if I thought my country was spending my money doing all that kind of stuff, I'd go nuts. And if most taxpayers did, there'd be revolutions. I mean, why do people always think the United States is behind it? Now I know, by the way, if I can get serious for a moment about it, during the Cold War, I know there were some things we're involved in, but I will tell you this from the perspective of the United States U.S. foreign policy. And I'm not saying it was right. I'm just trying to analyze it. If for people who were alive during the period of the Cold War, will remember that there really seemed to be an existential battle between the United States and the Soviet Union, between capitalism and communism, between individual freedom and state and state direction. Also, we would hear again and again, and you could go back to any of the Soviet leaders. We believe that their goal was to spread communism throughout the world and even into the United States. So for people who believe in capitalism and individual freedom, that was just that's an existential threat. And that is how the United States and U.S. foreign policy perceived things in the Cold War, perceived it as an existential threat. And as India knows so well, because you have face down existential threats. When something's an existential threat to your country, to your people, you're willing to do certain things you might not otherwise do in other situations. That was the Cold War. And that experience of the Cold War, it seems, has really made an impression on a lot of people. So I do understand, but we are not facing an existential threat right now. There is no existential threat to my country at this point. So again, all these things just drive as much. I mean, I come to South Asia, and you know this, sir. I come to South Asia to learn. I come to learn, and I love what I learn. And then I get this nonsense, and it's like, no, this is not what I came to learn. This is ridiculous. And by the way, with all those conspiracy theories, the coup in Bangladesh, the coup in Nepal, the change of government in Sri Lanka, the assassinate Prime Minister, I have yet to hear one piece of solid evidence. It's all speculation. Oh, well, there was this special forces guy in Dhaka, and so that had to be it. Nonsense. Okay, so
we got your understanding.
Someone can say, "Here's the evidence." Then I'll take another look, and if I'm wrong, I'll come on your show and I'll say, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to mislead your viewers, but I would admit that I was wrong if someone can show me the evidence. And by the way, that's evidence. That's not speculation. Conspiracy theories, by the way, are driven by, well, I can't figure out what happened, but I know this didn't happen, so it must be this other thing. You got to find the evidence. All right, sorry.
Definitely. So
it gets me excited.
Yes. So we had a clear understanding about what the U.S. foreign policy is, how US and its security services operate, and how US has not its role into the assassination of Prime Minister Modi. So from your point of view, our audience will be get a better understanding of how things work at that level. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, moving to the another next controversial topic.
I'm sorry, sir, may I just interrupt 1 second? Just
Definitely.
for me personally, if I found out that my country was involved in assassinating Prime Minister Modi, I would I would go crazy. I mean, I would, because I do have contact. I'm in Washington a lot, and I would be there, and I'd be demanding all sorts of investigations, and that the guilty parties come forth. Besides the fact that our Constitution, or excuse me, our laws now tell us we're not allowed to do that. And so, if anyone did that, they'd actually be breaking U.S. law as well. I'm sorry, but
We
I
have
just personally, if my government did that, I would just be furious and demand
we
why.
appreciate your love for India, sir. We appreciate your love for India. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, moving to our next controversial topic. In October 2025, Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus gifted a book to Pakistan's military chief that displayed parts of India's northeast within a stylish map of Bangladesh. How should India interpret this signal, sir? An artistic oversight or deliberate provocation? Sir, do you think Bangladesh under Yunus is on its verge of its extension by this move of Yunus?
Well, if I were the people of India or the government of India, I would look at that map the same way Israelis look at maps by Palestinians that show no state of Israel. It as I said with the last question, I don't believe in coincidence. I don't think it's an oversight. There are enough people who would check that. I think it is a deliberate provocation. Uh, I would say a few things with regard to that, and it does fall into the last part, the second question. Just as we saw with Israel and the Palestinians, you look at that map, and you just with Israel. So yeah, well, they can make all the maps they want to make. They still can't make it happen. Same thing up here, because India is too great a country to allow it to happen. And as far as the other, neither Pakistan nor Bangladesh are strong enough to make that happen. But I do think it was a deliberate provocation. I think it says, "Look at me, I'm significant. Look at me, I have these dreams of, and one day I'm going to do this." And part of the philosophy of Islamists is that yes, we might be beaten once, twice, 3 times, 10 times, or 100 times, but eventually, over time, we're going to win. Well, we that's another discussion, but that's a discussion for another. But with regard to that, yeah, the question is, they might say, look, again, it's look at me. Here's my intention. Here's what's going to be. But I think now getting to the second part. So, by the way, so I find the map just a provocation and nothing else. Sort of like, remember when China renamed on their map, they renamed some of the AP towns, localities. They gave them Chinese names. And then India responded by giving Tibetan names to places in Tibet. So, it's their provocations, but I don't think they really have any great moment themselves. Now, however, with regard, you ask a fascinating question with regard to Bangladesh. I think the one thing we have to understand about Bangladesh is the direction they're headed in, if they go in that direction, is unsustainable. They cannot maintain themselves as a state which is, one, a Chinese vassal, which is where they're headed. Two, is ruled by Islamists, which is kind of the case to some extent now, and has just has maybe a figurehead that they believe will fool the people in the West for a while. That's unsustainable, and we've seen how that hasn't worked. If you remember, Mahmoud Abbas was supposed to be that democratic figure. Well, they haven't had an election for over 2 decades, and even if so he's not looked. People don't look, and we're not that gullible in the West. We've seen that with others as well. We do know that radical Islamists, are diametrically opposed to the values and when I say we, I include the nation, the people of India, the values that we hold dear, religious freedom, the not just tolerance but acceptance of people who believe differently than we do. And you can go further to any kind of individual freedom, or for instance, diametrically opposed to the status of women. And I even feel bad saying, because we don't do it. It's not even the way we think about it. Women will do just like men will do in that regard. So status of women, certainly the existence of the LGBTQ community, and we can go on and on and on.
Yes.
I believe, to the extent that people see the reality of Bangladesh as an Islamist state, which is where it's headed, they're not going to be able to sustain themselves. And I'll give you another reason why they won't. Their economy is absolutely dependent on their ability to sell their garments to the West, and particularly to the United States. And if they have a government that is constantly, that is like a Taliban type government, yeah, think the United States, the citizens of the United States, are going to want to support that by them? I don't think so. I think Bangladesh has been fortunate for the last several decades in being able to fly under the radar and people not recognizing who they are. But having that, I think, would take them well out of out of the power they could send them. And who knows? Maybe that means greater purchases of garments from India. Who knows? And then I would say, with the other thing, another thing that makes it unsustainable is we're seeing now that China is unable to give the same level of financial support to, say, Pakistan as it had in the past. And it's going to keep going down. Well, if Bangladesh thinks by going closer to China, it's going to get all that money, well, not really. We can go into an analysis of the Chinese economy at whatever point you want, but that's not going to. So I think the direction where it's headed is not sustainable. Now, what happens, whether it breaks up, whether it remains, a country, whether it merges with West Bengal and there's one province inside India, who knows? Or maybe part of it goes back to Pakistan, which I don't think so. I mean, there's just somebody. So exactly what happens, who knows? But I just don't think the direction they're headed, if they continue in that direction, is sustainable.
Definitely, sir. It is not sustainable. So, sir, you have raised the point about China. So, sir, let's talk about the geopolitical scenario involving US, China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh and India. Sir, you have seen many US official government visits since past 1 year. The United States' growing presence in Bangladesh has drawn undeniable attention, sir. Yet, Washington remains silent about the Saint Martin's Island, Bangladesh's only coral island, and potential Bay of Bengal foothold. If not the island itself, what is the real US interest in Bangladesh? Political alignment, counter-China logistics, or covert operational staging? And also, sir, despite of this US $200 million in aid and open support for democratic reforms, Bangladesh continues expanding defense cooperation with China, including joint training with Pakistan. Does this show a failure of US strategy in South Asia, or a calculated move by Dhaka to extract maximum leverage from both the powers?
Thanks for asking that question. Me personally, I don't like what's happening. I would, if Secretary of State Rubio or President Trump would ask me my opinion, I would suggest different course we're taking. However, they might know they know things that I don't know. But I would say this: number one, the people of the United States don't have a clue about Bangladesh. I have spoken with people who were actually educated, didn't realize Bangladesh was its own country. And so there's really not much interest in what's going on there. And as far as Bangladesh per se, no, I don't think Bangladesh itself is of great interest, except as that we're a big market for them. But with regard to the struggle between democracy and autocracy in this world, and between the United States and China, yeah, Bangladesh is important because, of course, we know that with Chittagong Port on the Bay of Bengal, and now with the Chinese developing Mongla Port, much closer to India, also on the Bay of Bengal. I mean, that's all part of China's string of pearls strategy to surround India. And I would hope that the US and India are coordinating efforts together. So I believe that's that's the interest of strategic planners in the United States, not with Bangladesh itself, but in fact with uh, keeping it from falling completely in a Chinese orbit. Now, I'm not sure if that's working really well, quite frankly. I think that what Bangladesh has been doing is trying to replicate what countries did during the Cold War. They would say to the United States, well, you either give us this or we're going to go to the Soviets. And they would say to the Soviets, you give us that or we're going to go to the United States. And I think Bangladesh has been doing a lot of that. Now, by the way, look, they're a little country. They're not a strong country. And they're trying to leverage whatever power they have. And that's good for them. I mean, they're trying to do what's best for their people, hopefully. I also can tell you that former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was really quite good at that. She really was. She and her advisors were able, I think they were able to read the land pretty well to determine, okay, here's what I can push for. I'm going to hold back with this. Here's where my vulnerabilities are, but here's where I think I got my strength. She was very good in that regard. I don't have the same admiration for Muhammad Yunus or the people around him that I do. By the way, it doesn't mean that I thought that the Awami League government was great and it fell because of its own abuses. But I think they were much better at that. Also, as I said before, this is not the Cold War. And the United States is trying to pull back from certain parts of the world. We'll have to see what this new trade agreement between the U.S. and China is in reality and how it might affect things. So it's hard to know which way that's going, but I do believe you are absolutely correct in identifying that Bangladesh is trying to leverage its position to get as much as it can from the United States and from China. Again, I will note that Bangladesh has benefited from the fact that so few people really give a crap about it. I'm talking, that it can fly under the radar. For instance, you and I both know, because I know we've spoken about this, they've been able to commit ongoing and horrendous atrocities for decades against their Hindu community and other people of minority religion, and yet the world hasn't jumped on it. You don't see college
Not
students.
US, not India, not UN, no one. They are speaking, but it is not that efficient. The way they should have speak globally, they are not doing. I am speaking about India as well. So why this is so, sir?
Well, my opinion, and I've been doing this for a long time, not issue in particular, is that there are a few reasons. I think one is that Bangladesh was supposed to represent a democracy in the Muslim world compared to pretty much every other Muslim majority country. And part of that democracy, and you see this in their constitution, was secularism. And that means that they could have people who are not Muslim, even though their constitution, first word of their constitution, by the way, is Bismillah. And they are Islam is an official religion, but their law says that's not supposed to restrict the rights of any other. So they were supposed to be that secular and democratic, and for so many people in the world, in the West, and not just the West, as you mentioned, India too, particularly on the left, not just the hard left, but leftist, just center left, and people in the the human rights industry around the world, not me, to put their finger on Bangladesh means that, maybe we have to rethink what our assumptions are. And in fact, maybe the country that we like to beat up the most, and who are the countries they beat up the most? Israel, the United States, India, maybe we shouldn't beat them up. Maybe we need to concentrate on the real atrocities going on elsewhere. For instance, I would say So we have the real atrocities against minorities in Bangladesh, certainly not in India, just like we have the real occupation in Pakistan, where Baluch, Pashtun, Sindhi, and others are being occupied, not in the Middle East. So it would force people to come to terms with their own contradictions, and they don't want to do that. And I think the other thing we got to add to that, and I'll use the term, the left. The left is committed to certain issues, and it's just is not one of them. And I will tell you, and I'm going to ask for your forgiveness ahead of time, but you'll see this is not how I feel, but just because what I'm going to repeat. But when I've seen leftist human rights activists, and I bring up Hindus in Bangladesh, they go, "Oh, well, they're not people of color. They're white adjacent." That's the term they use to kind of say, well, no, here's how we're going to ignore what's happening to these people. And I mean, and this has been again and again and again, not once or twice. So I think when you add all that together, and the fact that, well, they can keep themselves busy with plenty other real or imagined abuses, it's a lot. It's a lot easier to just ignore this. I will give you one final example of something, because this has been pissing me off for over a decade. So as you know, I've been working in Bangladesh for a long time, trying to stop the ethnic cleansing of Hindus. And one of the people I work with a lot, who's the real hero over there, is my brother Rabindra Ghosh, founder of Bangladesh Minority Watch, and I remember one time, the U.S. USCIRF, U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, they called me and said, well, we're going to go to Bangladesh, and I know you've been bugging us about this Hindu issue there. Who can we talk to there when we go? And I connected them with Rabindra Ghosh, and they met him in Dhaka. He gave them all sorts of evidence, and then said, look, I can show you where these things are happening right now. We can go to Kamala. And they said, okay, thanks a lot. We'll get back to you. Never got back to him, and it was never published in their paper. So for whatever reason, there's been whether it's I'm not saying there's been a directed decision, but sort of a collective interpretation, just ignore this. And there's one other thing. I think we'd have more people paying attention to this if the Hindu diaspora living in free countries like yours and mine would stand up. Now, I can tell you there is a small part of that diaspora here that works hard. And I know my Jewish community and the Hindu community here in Chicago, we've worked together to defeat anti-India resolutions, things like that. But I think if the Hindu community and their friends, say in my community, if we together, we were more vocal, and we all should know how to be vocal. I think people would be forced to address it more. But if we stay timid and don't say anything, then they can ignore it.
Definitely. Sir, the last and the most important topic of today, sir, the Bangladesh 2026 elections. Sir, with the Awami League banned, the opposition fragmented, and Jamaat-e-Islamiya's militant networks reportedly researching, what realistic chance exists for a free election in 2026? If Sheikh Hasina's exiled supporters heed her boycott call, will it paralyze polling or trigger mass unrest?
Thank you for asking that. Well, my first answer to that is, let's try and remember when the last time was Bangladesh had a free election. I can't. Maybe after the 2007 coup, they had one. That was in the end of 2008. But since then, they have not had any. And that's just my opinion. That's the opinion of people who do that thing for a living all over the world, from friendly countries that aren't that friendly. And no one, there's just not, you just don't have free elections in Bangladesh. I can remember being at a special meeting in Dhaka one year. This was in the Bengali New Year, 2014. And I remember talking with an Awami League official, and even he joked. He said, "Yeah, the votes were counted the night before the election." That is Bangladesh, and that's under the best of conditions when you have a stable government. We have a real mess right now there. So there are two things about the situation, I think, that should make us wonder if it's even possible for them to have good free election. One, we have the growing influence of the Islamists. The Islamists, they do not play fairly. And I think if we expect them to, we're being naive. So they're going to do what they can, number one. Number two.
Sir, do you think BNP also have a chance in this case?
Well, I don't think so. And I'll tell you in a minute. But and then the government right now, central government, very weak in terms of structures that could ensure free election. So what will happen? First of all, I think you cannot have a free election if you don't allow all major political parties to participate. And we know that the Awami League, despite what happened last August, we know that the Awami League still has a strong following there. And
yes.
We've been keeping on top of that. So you're basically disenfranchising that. So I think until Bangladesh opens, says no, all the political parties can participate. Remember, they removed the ban on Jamaat. Fine, let Jamaat, but until they allow all parties to participate, it cannot be a free election. So I think so that's part of your question. We're starting. There'll be no free election in Bangladesh. Period. There hasn't been. There hasn't been for decades, and there are all the reasons I just went over why there won't be one now. Who will emerge? Well, I think first of all we have to recognize that whether they win outright or are just part of the ruling coalition, Jamaat will be in the government, or some variant of the Islamist group, and that's very concerning. And that should be especially concerning for the state of minorities there, and certainly for the direction the government's going, the country will be going. And so I think Jamaat's going to have a role in whoever emerges. Now, Jamaat and BNP have recently split over the last several months. They don't care for each other very much. Also, my own research and sources inside Bangladesh is that when Awami League was deposed, a lot of people thought, oh, good, now that's going to mean more support for BNP. But there seemed to have been more of a feeling among people that BNP and Awami League were two sides of the same coin. We want to get away from the politics of the past. We had two begums who hated each other, and that's what drove the political character in Bangladesh. So I'm not sure the BNP, is sitting in a good position. So who does that leave? And are there people now joining the LDP there? I'm not sure. That was a marginal party. We still have yet more parties to emerge or more coalitions? I don't know, but I do believe that with Jamaat holding a major role, and certainly a kingmaker role at the very least, we will not see a democratic government, no matter what kind of facade they try and put on.
Definitely. Sir, before we let you go, one last final question. You already said that the Bangladesh state is unstable at the moment. Sir, but if we being positive, then what 3 warning signs should analysts watch in the next few months to gauge whether Bangladesh is stabilizing or not?
Okay, well, I think, by the way, one warning sign, it's not so much for stability. Well, interpreted as such, was one warning sign is people should have paid attention to the elections at Dhaka University, where Jamaat won all but a few of the positions. That is usually a bellwether of what the politics are in Bangladesh. So I think that's one warning sign that certainly with Jamaat in a power position, there is no stability. By the way, we saw that in Egypt after the Arab Spring, when the Morsi government took over. And like Jamaat, they put their religious ideology ahead of the good of the people, and the people ended up rebelling, and then the military took over. So that's one warning sign. I think we should look and see at the activity of Jamaat. Jamaat's been sending people over to my country to try and get, for instance, right now to try and encourage, and I think you talked about this too, to try and encourage Bangladeshis here to vote for Mandami in the elections in New York on Tuesday. So I think you definitely want to look at Jamaat. If Jamaat is becoming more active, both internally or even externally, that should be another warning sign for us. And then I would say another one would be if, in fact, we start seeing, we don't see a return to the rule of law. If police still only prosecute cases that they want to prosecute and not giving everyone the same status under the law, that doesn't change. That's a warning sign. Right now, there's no independent judiciary in Bangladesh. They're at the behest of whoever holds the reins of power. And if that doesn't change, that's a problem too. I think I think then there's one final thing, and that's the economy. The August 2024 coup was not caused by the reservations. That's what people look at, but that was just the final the final excuse. It was the fact that the economic miracle, which filled people's bellies with food, ended, and people were losing their jobs, and inflation was still high. And so people all of a sudden now didn't like a lot of things that they tolerated in the past because their bellies were full. Excuse me. And I think with all these other things that are happening, if in fact the economy is strong, people put up with it. But if we start seeing the same thing that we saw before August 2024, then expect instability. Expect instability. And then one final factor. Shortly after she became prime minister, Sheikh Hasina started purging opponents from the military leadership positions. And if we start seeing things like that happen, where more people in control of the military are favorable to, say, Jamaat, obviously I'm most concerned about Jamaat, then I think we're going to see more of that instability. So I would say there are a lot of things we can look at, but those are probably the core group we want to see. If any of those things happen, by the way, you notice I did not mention if we see anything with regard to minorities, because things are already terrible. There's nothing being done for them by the government, and it's not going to get any better. It's just going to stay bad.
Got it. Sir, it was a very good time with you as always. We learned a lot from you, and hope we soon again on Bharat News. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you so much.
What we heard today is a chilling reminder that Bangladesh today is more than an internal crisis. It's a test for global concerns and regional stability. Whether it's the truth behind the Dhaka death, the silence on anti-Hindu atrocities, or the shadow games of global powers, the next few months will define not just Bangladesh's future, but South Asia's balance of power. We will continue to track these developments closely here on Bharat TV. I am Hriday Raval signing off for today. Thank you so much, Willie. See you in the next edition of Bharat Exclusive. Thank you so much.